Hello, my name is Ryan Johnson. I am the principal engineer for the city's water reclamation department. Wanted to put together a presentation to further expand on the purpose and goals of this initial phase, or this preliminary design component for the Basin 15 RFP. Certainly we'd normally do this with a presentation in an open house format where we could follow with questions. Given the current COVID situation, that will not be the case. So we'll provide this presentation. If you have questions, by all means, put those questions in writing and submit them to our point of contact, David Decker, whose contact information is provided in the RFP. We'll in turn provide answers as best we can in appropriate time to keep the project moving forward. This is the first time I've used this software to develop presentations, or an online presentation, so please bear with me as I try to work through the software. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. See two main components that are really being highlighted with this preliminary design. One is certainly the phase 1 sanitary sewer extension, and we'll get into that in just a little bit, but another piece is developing the cost recovery for that Basin 15. So to do that, we're going to have to refine the service areas, boundaries, and projected flows so we can size the infrastructure appropriately, develop the infrastructure needs, again, to serve those areas, the cost, which will ultimately be used to develop an overall cost recovery amount. Also want to walk through just a little bit on the funding components, and then we'll get into some further pieces of information pertaining to the RFP. Last piece, we'll got some drone footage to give you a little bit more of a sense of how the site will be for future infrastructure, including the phase 1 gravity sewer. First component of this work will be to take a look at the overall service areas that were portrayed in the master plan. We will be looking at a 100-year service area for both Basin 15 and Basin 34. That work will start by reviewing master plan documents, working with appropriate stakeholders to really refine and define that service area and service boundaries. From there, those areas will be used to develop an overall contributing flow from Basin 34 and Basin 15, again, to start sizing that shared infrastructure that will serve both those basins. Exhibit 1 shown here shows the Basin 15 and Basin 34 100-year service boundaries and areas that were developed in the 2016 master plan. Basin 15 shown in purple below, Basin 34 shown above. Again, the hope is to refine that total service area and those basin limits to ultimately develop a flow that come together near the confluence of Basin 34 and Basin 15. That flow number will be used to size infrastructure to serve these areas, and again be used to develop the cost recovery amount for Basin 15. Exhibit 2 shows the concept pump station location and equalization basin located on city-owned land just to the northeast of 12th Street and Ellis Road. The phase 1 Basin 15 sewer is shown in the red dash line. It'll tie into what we call our Sioux River North Interceptor sewer, shown here. Run straight west basically, and then turn south, and then cross 12th Street and serve this approximately 1,200 acres, along with the future growth area that will be established and defined as a part of this study. Hope is to also lay out concept locations of our tie-in locations for the Basin 15 sewer to our future pump station, along with a concept alignment and tie-in location of the Basin 34 sewer. So that way we're taking a holistic approach as we develop infrastructure to serve this overall area. So as mentioned, once the areas, future growth areas and boundaries are established, those areas will be used to define the contributing flows from each of those basins and used to size a future pump station, equalization, and ultimately force main to serve both Basin 15 and Basin 34. Hopes with this project would be to provide preliminary layouts of the pump station and the equalization basins. We're also hoping to take a look at the force main alignment and delve into that a little further. We have one alignment that's shown in the master plan, but we would certainly entertain concepts and ideas to refine those locations and possibly route them in a better location to ultimately provide the best value to the ratepayers of Sioux Falls. Those shared infrastructure costs would then be divided out on a proportionate basis. The proportion going to Basin 15 will be used to develop the Basin 15 cost recovery. Basin 34 will be used at some point in the future to develop a cost recovery amount for Basin 34. Specific to Basin 15, that basin or that phase 1 trunk sewer extension, the goal of that is to refine that to a 30% level where we would have actual manhole locations, manhole depths, and a profile provided, along with a firm or a 30% cost estimate to really understand the cost and budgets of that project going forward. Lastly, specific to Basin 15 is the future trunk sewer extensions. Goal of this project is to lay out infrastructure for the 100-year growth area. Tall order, but the purpose of doing that is we anticipate these early pieces of infrastructure to last anecdotally 100 years. So the thought is to maximize the use of that infrastructure rather than having to upsize it in, say, 20, 30, or 50 years. So that's why the goal is to take such a long view with some of these early pieces of infrastructure. Specific to Basin 34, mentioned it earlier, like to develop a preliminary alignment from that pump station to Ellis Rd, which would ultimately end up serving Basin 34. Purpose of that is to make sure that we're developing a cohesive and long-term view when we develop that whole area with sanitary sewer infrastructure. Should also mention that confluence area that is owned by the city of Sioux Falls is also being looked at by the city's Parks Department. So coordination with that group as we develop concept is going to be important to really make a holistic approach to this area. Again, as noted, the proportionate share for the shared infrastructure, that being the pump station, the equalization basin, and force mains that would ultimately serve Basin 15 and Basin 34 will be developed, and then combined with the total share of the Basin 15 trunk sewer cost for both phase 1 and all future cost, divided by the overall service area of Basin 15 to develop that preliminary or that Basin 15 cost recovery amount. Want to note that the project will be funded by State Revolving Funds, and so the goal is to also develop a facility plan for the phase 1 project work, which will be submitted well ahead of the phase 1 project and used to finance the phase 1 project. The total project budget for the preliminary design, final design, construction, and construction administration is $9.21 million. that will certainly be reviewed and updated as we go through these initial design phases, if the budget needs to be improved to get that first phase in. As far as the schedule goes, RFP was issued May 8th. Deadlines for question is May 27th. Noted earlier, please direct questions to our point of contact that's listed in the RFP, David Deckert. Its contact information is provided in the RFP. Final addenda or answers to questions will be June 1st, no later than 5 o'clock on June 1st. And proposals are due June 15th. Information pertaining to how and where to submit proposals is included in the RFP. From there, proposals will be reviewed internally. Proposals will be reviewed and scored internally. If necessary, interviews will be coordinated with firms late part of June. The goal is to award the contract and begin negotiations in July of this year, with the goal of executing that first design contract or this preliminary contract in August of 2020. Present that to council in August. That should put us about a notice to proceed of late August 2020, early part of September 2020. Goal is to have this initial work, including all the pre-design of the pump station, force main, equalization basins, future infrastructure for Basin 15, and that Basin 15 Phase 1 project, all completed by April or the end of April 2021. From there, Phase 1 sewer, the hope is to continue design and be ready to bid in April or in 2021, early part of 2022, with a substantial completion of 2022, early 2023. Wanted again note that the point of contact is David Deckert with the City of Sioux Falls Finance Department. His email address is shown there. Again, please direct all questions in writing to David. Contacting staff outside of David for any questions may be grounds to rejecting the proposal completely. So just wanted to really highlight and note that piece. Lastly, I make mention of future contracts as a part of that RFP. Certainly, Phase 1 final design will either be amended or added as a separate contract. Construction administration will be a separate contract. Want to make a distinction between the cost recovery dollar amount that we're requesting as a part of this contract and the cost recovery role or resolution as a separate contract. Again, the cost recovery amount is to be included with this contract, but the legal work associated with developing a cost recovery role and resolution will be performed under a separate contract upon the completion of this preliminary design. Also wanted to note the city is considering updating the system development charges somewhat in conjunction with this project, so that will be performed under a separate contract, and the means and methodologies for selecting a consultant to provide both the cost recovery role and resolution updates and the SDC updates are being worked through currently. So no reason to reach out for us. We'll certainly present something to the consultant community at some point in the future on that. The last item I wanted to share was some aerial images and some drone footage of our proposed pump station equalization basin site. Shown here is a view looking north. To the left side of the screen is Ellis Rd. Here is some privately owned property. This is Skunk Creek, located here. Half a mile to the south is 12th Street. proposed location of the future pump station and equalization basin is somewhere in this area. Again, the property is owned by the city of Sioux Falls with the long-term goal of having this be a regional park area also. So some level of coordination will need to occur as we start laying out this infrastructure with the Parks Department to make sure we're having an overall cohesive look to feel to this area. The view shown here is basically the southwest corner of our site. Skunk Creek is just below the bottom of the screen. To the left is Family Park. To the right here is privately held land. In the lower right hand corner of the screen is the city of Sioux Falls property. And just a little further to the north, to the right of this screen, is where we would locate our future pump station and equalization basin. Very generally, the Basin 15 alignment would run along the access road here and continue west on Sands Road, ultimately a mile to the west of Ellis Road, and then turning back to the south. As you'll see here, this is Sands Road. Active mining operations on both sides of Sand Road. High water table. I understand, to my knowledge, Sands Road is a private road that's actively used for the property owners here to deliver sand to their operations. This portion is located approximately 1 mile to the west of Ellis Road, heading towards 12th Street. Again, the goal is to finish or stop the Phase 1 project on the south side of 12th Street, with the end goal of serving area that's currently located in the basin, or the west side sanitary sewer cost recovery area. Ultimately, to the area to the west is going to be future service area, and at some point sewer extensions will occur as development demands. Want to close by saying thank you to the consultant community for taking a look at this project and working hard to develop proposals for us to consider. Again, if you have questions, direct them towards the point of contact, David Deckert, in the time frame and schedule that we have provided in the RFP. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you again.